Just to kind of give you a little bit of a sense of what are the different aspects of this diagram. The first one being delivered product. In Waterfall, we primarily are putting together that whole project so that the product that we're delivering is all showing up primarily at the end of the project. Whereas in Agile, what we're doing is delivering incremental pieces of the product, getting it out, and actually a big concentration on things that are termed like minimal viable product. And we're trying to get pieces out there that we can actually test out with our customers and understand, are we getting great, are we heading in the right direction? Is this something that's providing value? What's the next set of features that you want to bring on board? The next one is really chance of failure. And what Waterfall, because we discover a lot about the project towards the end, when all the pieces start coming together, our risk of failure goes up typically at the end of all these Waterfall deliveries. Because we're seeing this all, and what happens? We start snow plowing out the dates, or we start cutting features, or whatever. Well, in Agile, the key thing is we have all that risk kind of in the beginning of the project, but because we're now delivering all the time, we're integrating all the time, with that risk really starts dwindling as we get further and further and know more and more with real information back from how our product's playing with our customer base. And then from a spending perspective, typically what happens in Waterfall is the spending goes up towards the end of the project, because all of a sudden the dates are upon us. We got to figure out how to make it happen. Everybody's barking at us to get it done. And in Agile, we just make decisions about how many people, how many teams are we putting against making this project delivery happen, and we just sprint after sprint after sprint spend the same amount of money over and over again. What are some of the issues that pop up in the Waterfall world that Agility tries to address? The first one really is talking about this, where essentially we have our typical Waterfall of doing analysis, design, coding, testing, and that sort of thing in a software world, and that all starts on a path towards a set of customer intent that we're aiming to deliver, but that starts way back at the analysis phase, right? Well, as all that time is passing by, the market may have changed, the customer need may have changed, all that sort of thing, and all of a sudden we realize we're on a path that isn't aiming at the real need that now has shown up 9 months, 12 months, 18 months later. So Agility works to address that problem. We've got the problem of the kitchen sink, and this is one of the things we spent, I mentioned about this notion of release orientation. We have some materials out on our website if you want to look at release orientation, about that a little bit more. But the whole idea is, in the project world, we spend a pretty decent amount of time up front figuring out what is the project, like what's in there, and then every person in the organization starts getting their grubby hands on what is the project, and all of a sudden the project isn't this, it's this, and now it's this, and all of a sudden this thing is the kitchen sink trying to be delivered, and all of a sudden this thing's now taking longer, it's costing more money, because everybody believes that if I don't hitch my wagon to that project, because actually some executive cares about it, there might not be another wagon for me to hitch myself to. So that's the kitchen sink problem. We've also got the software defect problem, and we talked about, in Waterfall, late integration typically is one of the things that happens. And Agility works to address this problem, that rather than putting in the software world, putting in code early in the project, or I'm sorry, when you put code in the project, some number of days, weeks, months down the line, that code actually starts arriving in an integrated fashion. And now we've potentially delivered tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of lines of code that are now all in this big muck of a system that we have to integrate and get to another place. Whereas in Agility, we work to deliver code and within minutes figure out that it's working or not. And now instead of looking at the needle in the haystack of tens and hundreds of thousands of lines of code, I'm looking at tens of lines of code, because that's the change set that's happened in that very short amount of time, and very quick to find and fix defects. And then we have the issue of too much waste in delivering features that people really don't particularly care about. And one of the key things when you talk about this project that's gone from here to here to here to here, well, there's probably a whole set of features in there that we really don't know whether the market particularly cares about those things, or our customers particularly care about. Whereas with agility, we're continually spending time prioritizing the most important features that have to get done, sending them out to the market and saying, did we hit the mark or did we not hit the mark? And then we get an opportunity to essentially reorder the priority of what's heading towards the teams that are delivering that stuff. So Lean in the software world has these seven principles associated with it. I'm not going to dive into every one of them, but we'll spend a little bit of time going into the eliminate waste aspect of it. Lean, essentially, agile development really has its foundations in Lean and looks to Lean on how all of what the umbrella of agility is there. And this also all got born essentially back in the early 2000s in this group of folks that met in Utah to put together this thing called the Agile Manifesto, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But the whole idea is, through that lean thinking, how do we essentially look at making agility break out? Well, this Agile Manifesto essentially outlines a way of thinking, and one of the frameworks that is considered agile is Scrum. There are other frameworks like feature-driven development, Crystal Clear, so forth, that also fit under this agile umbrella and kind of meet the thought patterns that are outlined in the Agile Manifesto. Scrum is the most popular one out there. We're going to spend probably the last half of the presentation diving a bit deeper into what is Scrum. Now, many organizations on top of Scrum will do this thing called XP, or extreme programming. Extreme programming is really just another set of practices, and I'll just give you a couple examples. And one example of extreme programming is pair programming. So we actually sit down as a pair with one person's hands on the keyboard, another person over the shoulder of that person, and now we're delivering that software. What you could say is, oh, half as fast, right? No, the answer is not. It actually, we have seen with teams that have done pair programming that actually they can deliver as fast, if not faster. And one of the things that breaks out is we're essentially continuously doing a peer review of all the work that's getting done, and therefore the quality of what's being delivered is there. Another key thing in extreme programming is continuous integration. Continuous integration is the process of essentially always delivering software in an automated fashion to have automated software builds, automated software deployments, automated software testing. And with all this automation in place, essentially we have the backbone and the infrastructure for making rapid changes to our code and knowing that what we just injected into the software code is still doing the job that it was, plus the job that for the enhancement that we're trying to build into that software. Yeah, so I have been in organizations that were totally waterfall, moving to agile. I can tell you that from a change management perspective, sometimes you have to drop the guideline of 7 plus or minus 2 and say, okay, a 12 person team is what we need to get the job done for now. But that doesn't mean we're going to stay in that mode forever, because am I in the same boat together? For 12 people, maybe I believe I am, but probably not to the same degree as having a smaller team. So what am I going to do? I'm going to spend time putting together cross-training plans and so forth. Or, much to like you're talking about infrastructure needs, you can have a separate team whose essentially only job is helping the other development teams go faster, better, stronger with automated builds, automated deployments, automated environments. And that team is getting their backlog of what their intent from the other development teams, and then figuring out, based on these 10 teams I'm servicing, what's the most important thing that has to happen to make the best outcome for the business occur. So you can do, again, back to agile organizational design, you can stuff those DevOps people inside the team if it makes sense for your organization, or you can say, let's kind of keep them as a separate team because we need the focus and energy, and if we stuff them inside the team, we're only going to work on business feature function rather than building the servers and automation we really need to build. The product owner really is really the one responsible for maximizing the value of the product that the team is delivering. So really thinking about what is the product that our market and our customers need, and then making sure the translation of those needs comes back to the teams themselves. And they're really the sole person responsible for managing this thing called a product backlog. So think about product backlog is really just a list. That list isn't high, medium, and low. That list is 1, 2, 3 through N, and 2 is more important than 3 and less important than 1 on that list. And so that product backlog is essentially the marching orders for what does the team consume when it goes to the sprint planning meeting. And that product owner is responsible for making sure that there's a great product backlog in place, full of user stories, and making sure that it's prioritized in a manner that makes the maximum value of the product. So let's talk about the Scrum Master for a little bit. And the Scrum Master really is this servant leader in the team. And they really are working with the development team, the product owner, and essentially the rest of the organization to pull off their roles well. So from an from the development team perspective, it's making sure that the team, their primary thing is making sure the team really executes Scrum and Agile well. So they're looking out and observing the team continuously and saying, are we doing this in the right manner? And if not, pushing the team to a better level of agility. They're that servant leader to the team, so we definitely don't want the command and control that you might associate it with other roles. We want them to essentially be looking at the team's needs and then figuring out how can we support what the team needs to accomplish in this next 2 weeks that we put together. One of their key roles is removing impediments, and Agile and Scrum specifically is just religious about this notion of impediments don't get the opportunity to last for any amount of time in our organization. And so we, as part of the daily Scrum that we get together, we'll talk about a little bit more, every team member is expected to say, what are the impediments that are hitting me, and keeping me from helping the team achieve the goals we set out to do for this 2-week period of time. The Scrum Master, any of those items that the team can't solve for itself, the Scrum Master is meant to be kind of the chief impediment remover for the team. Yeah, sure. Sorry. Yeah, so typically project managers end up in 2 places in Scrum. The Scrum Master is certainly one of them that's most popular, and I think if you as a project manager kind of get that servant leader aspect of it and are willing to relinquish a bit of that making a plan happen, you'll be very successful in a Scrum Master role. The other place that I've seen, and especially when you talk about doing Agile at scale, you still need roles like portfolio management. So we still need to be figuring out what are the key initiatives, and back to, yes, there is planning in Agile. We still have to make smart business decisions about what are the things we are going to spend our time and energy on as an organization. And so we need portfolio management to figure out what are the key things that we should be doing and where should our dollars go. So the question is, now you have 3 or 4 teams, how do you manage that? And there's this concept called a Scrum of Scrums. So typically, a representative from the team, which is typically the Scrum Master, comes together on some basis. A representative from each team comes to that Scrum of Scrums, and doesn't have to be. Yeah.